more than just a friend. The beginning of something else. The first time Maya met Elena, it was in the most ordinary place, an old, cozy cafe tucked away between two bookshops on a quiet street. Maya had been a regular there for years, always with her sketchbook and her coffee, while Elena was new in town, wandering in one rainy evening as if fate itself had nudged her through the door. Maya noticed her immediately, not just because she was beautiful in an understated way, with dark hair falling in soft waves over her shoulders, but because she carried herself with a kind of quiet grace, the kind that made her seem like she belonged everywhere and nowhere at once. They sat at separate tables that night, but somehow ended up sharing small glances. Maya couldn't help but watch Elena flip through a worn novel, her lips curling into the faintest smile as she read. There was something magnetic about her. When their eyes finally met, it was brief, but enough to spark something neither of them could name. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, their casual cafe encounters grew into something familiar. Elena started sitting closer, sometimes at the table next to Maya, until one day Maya simply asked, "Would you like to sit with me?" Elena's smile then had been radiant, like she had been waiting for that invitation all along. From that moment, their friendship took root, grounded in shared stories, long conversations, and the kind of silences that felt comfortable rather than awkward. Maya was an artist, often lost in her sketches of people, faces, and fleeting moments. Elena was a writer, her mind always weaving words into stories she often kept to herself. Together, they found themselves inspiring one another, Elena reading aloud fragments of her unfinished tales while Maya sketched her characters into life. Their afternoons at the cafe stretched into evenings until the staff knew them by name and kept their favorite corner ready. But what neither of them admitted, at least not out loud, was how much those moments began to mean. Maya would sometimes catch herself staring too long at the way sunlight kissed Elena's skin through the cafe windows. Elena, on her part, felt her heart race whenever Maya laughed, that unguarded, musical sound that made her want to hear it again and again. They told themselves it was friendship, just friendship. Yet there were pauses between words, lingering glances, and touches that lasted just a little longer than they needed to. One evening, as rain tapped gently against the cafe's glass, Maya noticed the sleeve of Elena's sweater had slipped, revealing a faint scar along her wrist. She didn't ask, but she looked up at Elena, her eyes filled with a silent question. Elena caught her gaze, and for a moment, the air between them shifted. It was raw, vulnerable, as if they both understood that their connection went deeper than casual company. Elena smiled softly then, tugging the sleeve back down, but Maya never forgot that look or the unspoken trust it carried. Their friendship deepened outside the cafe too. They began walking through the city together, late-night strolls under glowing street lamps, mornings spent at book fairs, evenings cooking simple meals in Maya's tiny apartment. It became hard to imagine days without one another. Yet, beneath the laughter and comfort, there was an ache, an unnamed longing neither dared to voice. Maya sometimes wondered late at night, sketchbook on her lap, why her heart beat differently for Elena than it had for anyone else. She had dated before, men who were kind but never quite made her feel seen, women she admired but never truly connected with. Elena, however, was different. With her, Maya felt not just understood, but alive, as if every word, every glance, every touch mattered. Elena, too, found herself replaying moments in her head. Like the time Maya brushed a strand of hair from her face, her fingers grazing her skin, sending warmth flooding through her. Or the way Maya's eyes softened when Elena spoke about her dreams. She had always told herself she wasn't searching for love, but here it was, growing quietly between the cracks of friendship, refusing to be ignored. And yet, both of them stayed silent, afraid of breaking what they had, afraid of naming it, in case naming it meant losing it. So, they went on, two women orbiting each other, close enough to feel the gravity, but not yet brave enough to collide. What they didn't know was that change was inevitable. The truth, as it often does, would find a way out. Realization of deeper feelings. The first time Maya realized she might be falling for Elena was not during some dramatic moment, but on a quiet Sunday morning. They were sitting in Maya's apartment, sunlight filtering in through the thin curtains, the table cluttered with half-empty mugs of tea, crumbs from pastries, and books scattered across the surface. Elena was curled up on the couch, her knees pulled to her chest, reading one of her favorite poems aloud. Her voice was soft, unhurried, the kind of sound that seemed to seep directly into Maya's chest. Maya wasn't even listening to the words. Her eyes were fixed on Elena's lips, the curve of her mouth forming each syllable. Something inside her stirred, a warmth that spread through her like a quiet fire. It wasn't just admiration. It wasn't just friendship. It was something far more dangerous, something she had been trying to deny. She set down her pencil, realizing her latest sketch wasn't of the landscape outside, but of Elena herself, the tilt of her head, the softness of her expression. When Elena looked up and caught her staring, Maya felt her breath hitch. Elena tilted her head with a small smile. "What?" "Nothing," Maya replied quickly, cheeks flushing as she flipped the sketchbook shut. But inside, she knew there was nothing ordinary about the way she was beginning to feel. For Elena, the realization came in a moment of absence. Maya had gone on a short weekend trip to visit her family, and the apartment, usually filled with her presence, felt unbearably quiet. Elena found herself restless, pacing around her own home, her fingers itching to text, to call, to hear Maya's laugh. She missed her, not in the casual way friends missed each other, but with an ache, a longing that pressed heavy against her chest. When Maya finally returned, stepping into their cafe with a tired smile, Elena felt something within her unravel. She stood quickly, wrapping her arms around her before she could even think. The hug was meant to be casual, a simple welcome back, but neither of them let go right away. Maya's chin brushed against Elena's hair, and Elena inhaled deeply, taking in the scent of coffee and paint that always seemed to cling to her. When they finally pulled apart, both of them looked away too quickly, as if they had seen too much. Their friendship began to shift after that. There were small things, easy to dismiss if either of them had wanted to. Their hands would brush when they walked side by side, and neither pulled away immediately. Their conversations grew heavier, dipping into confessions about fears, dreams, and loneliness they had never shared with anyone else. Maya began drawing Elena more often, sometimes intentionally, sometimes without realizing it. Elena, in turn, began slipping pieces of herself into her writing, characters with dark hair and quiet strength, always paired with artists who seemed to see the world differently. But what made it undeniable were the silences, the ones that stretched between them at night when they sat together, neither needing to speak. In those silences, Elena felt her heart beat louder, as if begging to be noticed. Maya felt her skin buzz with awareness, her eyes drawn to Elena's lips, her fingers itching to reach out. One evening, after a long walk by the riverside, they sat on a bench watching the water shimmer under the streetlights. Elena leaned her head against Maya's shoulder, sighing softly. "Do you ever feel like you're waiting for something, but you don't know what?" Maya's chest tightened. She turned slightly, enough to see the profile of Elena's face, the softness of her eyes in the dim light. "All the time," she whispered. Elena smiled faintly, closing her eyes as if trusting Maya with a piece of her she rarely showed. "Sometimes I think I've already found it. I'm just scared to admit it." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Maya's pulse quickened, her throat dry. She wanted to ask, "Do you mean me?" She wanted to take Elena's hand, to confess the truth pounding in her chest. But fear gripped her, fear of losing what they had, fear of shattering the delicate balance of friendship. So she stayed silent, her arm brushing against Elena's as the night air wrapped around them like a secret. From then on, the distance between them seemed smaller, almost non-existent. Their laughter grew softer, more intimate, as if it belonged only to them. Their touches lingered. When Maya brushed paint from Elena's cheek, her fingers trembled. When Elena fixed a loose strand of Maya's hair, her hand stayed just a second too long. It was clear now they were no longer just friends. They were something more, something unspoken, waiting for the courage to bloom. And in their hearts, both of them knew it was only a matter of time. First confessions, emotional closeness. Autumn crept quietly into the city, painting the trees in shades of amber and crimson. The air grew cooler, the evenings darker, but for Maya and Elena, the change of season only drew them closer. Their cafe visits now included warm scarves and steaming mugs, their late-night walks often ending with the two of them huddled together under a shared umbrella. Every day seemed to thrum with an unspoken tension, as if the crisp air itself carried their secret. One Saturday evening, Maya invited Elena over to her apartment for dinner. The space was modest, small kitchen, paint-splattered table, canvases leaning against the walls, but it was warm, filled with the scent of spices and the soft hum of music playing in the background. Maya had tried to cook something elaborate, but in the end, they laughed their way through a half-burnt lasagna and a bottle of wine, happy in each other's company. When the plates were cleared and the music had softened into a slow, gentle rhythm, they settled onto the couch with glasses of wine. Elena curled her legs beneath her, her sweater slipping slightly off her shoulder, revealing a delicate line of skin that made Maya's stomach tighten with longing. They talked about everything and nothing, about books, about art, about how both of them sometimes felt out of place in the world. The kind of conversation that didn't need to be entertaining, only honest. And then, as the night grew quieter, the laughter faded into a comfortable silence. Elena swirled her wine absent-mindedly, her gaze lingering on Maya's face. "Maya," she said softly, almost hesitant, "can I tell you something?" Maya's heart skipped. "Of course." Elena set her glass down and tucked her hair behind her ear, her fingers fidgeting. "Sometimes I feel like I'm not being completely honest with myself. Or with you." She paused, her eyes searching Maya's as if looking for permission to continue. Maya leaned closer, her pulse quickening. "You can tell me anything." Elena's voice trembled just slightly. "I know we call ourselves friends, and I treasure that more than I can explain. But sometimes it feels like more. Like it's always been more." She exhaled shakily, her hands clasped tightly together. "And it scares me because I don't want to lose what we have." The world seemed to still in that moment. Maya's chest ached with relief, with fear, with joy all tangled together. She reached out slowly, her hand covering Elena's trembling fingers. "I felt the same," she admitted in a whisper. "For so long. I just didn't know how to say it." Elena's eyes widened, shining in the dim light, and for a long, breathless pause, they simply looked at each other, two souls finally stripped of their pretense. Maya squeezed her hand gently. "You could never lose me. Not for telling me the truth." Maya squeezed her hand gently. "You could never lose me. Not for telling me the truth." The tension broke with those words, but it left behind something new, something charged and tender. Elena shifted closer, her knees brushing against Maya's, their hands still entwined. Her voice was soft, almost vulnerable. "Do you ever think about us? About what it would be like if we weren't just friends?" Maya swallowed hard, her eyes drifting to Elena's lips. "All the time." The admission hung between them, thick with possibility. Neither moved for a moment, afraid that even the slightest motion might shatter the fragile magic of honesty. But then, slowly, Elena leaned her head against Maya's shoulder, her breath warm against her skin. Maya's arm wrapped around her instinctively, pulling her close, and in that embrace, everything felt right, as though they had finally stepped into the truth they had both been avoiding. They stayed like that for what felt like hours, hearts beating in quiet rhythm, neither speaking, both knowing this was the beginning of something they could no longer ignore. Later that night, as Elena prepared to leave, she paused at the doorway. The hallway light cast a golden glow around her, making her look almost ethereal. She hesitated, then turned back, her voice barely above a whisper. "Good night, Maya." Maya stepped closer, her hand brushing Elena's arm, lingering. "Good night." Their eyes met, and for a fleeting moment, it seemed inevitable. They would close the space, they would kiss, they would finally cross the line. But Elena, Her courage faltering, smiled softly instead and slipped out the door. Maya stood there long after, her heart pounding, knowing with certainty that what they had was no longer just friendship. It was love, raw and undeniable, waiting for its first true step. Their first kiss, rising tension. The days after Elena's quiet confession carried a different weight. Nothing had changed on the surface. They still met at the cafe, still walked through the streets at night, still filled their conversations with laughter and dreams. But beneath every glance, every word, there was a new awareness. It shimmered like heat in the air, impossible to ignore. For Maya, it showed in the way her gaze lingered too long on Elena's lips, in how her hands itched to reach across the table just to touch her fingers. For Elena, it was in the way her body leaned closer without realizing it, in how she caught herself watching Maya's every expression like it was something sacred. One evening, after a particularly long day, Maya invited Elena over again. She wanted company, but more than that, she wanted her. Elena arrived with a bottle of wine and a tired but warm smile. They cooked together, this time managing not to burn dinner. Moving around each other in the kitchen like they had been doing it for years. Their arms brushed, their laughter filled the room, and yet the silence that followed each shared glance said far more than words could. After dinner, they curled up on the couch, a movie playing quietly in the background, forgotten almost as soon as it started. Elena tucked herself against Maya's side, her head resting on her shoulder. Maya's arm slipped around her, natural and instinctive, pulling her closer. Neither spoke, but both could feel the steady rhythm of each other's hearts, faster than usual, betraying the calm they tried to keep. At some point, Elena lifted her head to look at Maya, and their eyes locked. The world outside seemed to fade, the flickering light of the television, the muffled hum of traffic, even the clock ticking softly on the wall. All that remained was the warmth between them, thick and magnetic. Maya's breath caught. Elena. Elena's gaze dropped briefly to Maya's lips before returning to her eyes. Yes! Her voice was a whisper, trembling with anticipation. Maya didn't answer with words. Slowly, carefully, as if giving Elena the chance to pull away, she leaned in. Their noses brushed, and for a heartbeat, they hovered in that fragile space between courage and fear. Then, finally, their lips met. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, an unspoken question asked and answered all at once. Elena's lips parted slightly against Maya's, and the warmth of her breath made Maya's heart race. It was slow, delicate, yet heavy with all the longing they had kept buried for so long. When they pulled back, barely an inch apart, Elena's eyes were shining. She let out a shaky laugh, her forehead resting against Maya's. I was so afraid of this, she admitted, her voice breaking slightly. Maya cupped her cheek gently, her thumb brushing against her skin. Afraid of what? Afraid that it would change everything. Elena closed her eyes, leaning into her touch. But now, I don't think I want to go back. When they finally broke apart, breathless, Elena rested her head against Maya's chest, listening to the wild rhythm of her heart. Maya held her tightly, her hand stroking her back in slow, soothing circles. Neither spoke, but both knew the truth now. There was no turning back. That night, Elena stayed longer than usual. They sat together in the quiet glow of the room, fingers entwined, stealing soft kisses between silences. Nothing else mattered, not the outside world, not the fear of what this could mean. All that mattered was that they had finally crossed the line, and it felt right. As Maya walked Elena to the door hours later, Elena paused once more, her hand lingering on the doorknob. She turned back, her smile tender and full of something that looked a lot like love. "Good night," she whispered. Maya kissed her softly, sweetly, before answering. "Good night." When the door closed, Maya leaned against it, her heart still racing, her lips still tingling from Elena's kiss. She knew, without a doubt, that this was only the beginning. Romantic and sensual intimacy blossoms. The night of their first kiss lingered in both their minds for days afterward. Every glance across the cafe, every brush of fingers, every shared silence seemed to carry a deeper weight now. It was no longer a question of if they were more than friends. It was a matter of how far they were willing to let themselves go, and how deeply they were ready to fall. A week later, Maya invited Elena over again, this time under the simple pretense of painting together. Elena arrived in her usual way, her hair slightly messy from the wind, her smile lighting up Maya's apartment before she even spoke. She slipped off her jacket and laughed as she noticed canvases scattered across the floor. "You've been busy," Elena said, kneeling down to look at them. Maya hesitated, her cheeks warm. "There, all of you." Elena's eyes softened as she flipped through the sketches. Her profile as she read, her laugh captured in a few quick strokes, even the curve of her hand holding a coffee cup. She looked up, her expression tender, touched. "You see me in a way no one else does." Maya swallowed hard, her voice quiet. "That's because you're the only one I want to see." The silence that followed was charged, pulsing with unspoken emotions. Elena set the sketches down and crossed the small distance between them, cupping Maya's face gently in her hands. Their lips met again, soft, searching, but quickly deepening into something that felt like surrender. This time, neither pulled away. The kiss grew slower, heavier, as Elena's fingers threaded into Maya's hair, tugging her closer, while Maya's hands traced the lines of Elena's back, memorizing the feel of her. The world outside fell away. There was only the warmth of lips, the racing of hearts, the desperate need to close every last bit of space between them. Maya pulled back just enough to whisper against Elena's lips. "Stay tonight." Elena's breath hitched, her eyes meeting Maya's with a mix of longing and nervousness. But then she nodded, her voice steady. "I want to." The night unfolded gently, tenderly, as if they were both learning how to exist in this new, fragile space together. They lay on the couch at first, tangled in one another, kissing slowly, savoring every brush of lips and every sigh that slipped free. Maya's hand traced Elena's arm, her shoulder, her waist, each touch deliberate, asking permission without words. Elena's hands rested on Maya's hips, pulling her closer, grounding her in the heat of the moment. When they finally moved to the bedroom, it was with unspoken agreement, their fingers intertwined, their bodies pressed close. The room was dim, lit only by the glow of the streetlight filtering through the curtains, casting soft golden shadows across their skin. Maya kissed Elena again, slower now, her lips exploring with reverence. Her hands moved carefully, brushing over Elena's sides, her back, memorizing every curve. Elena shivered beneath her touch, her breath uneven, her body leaning into Maya's with trust and need. Their intimacy wasn't rushed, it was deliberate, unfolding like a secret they had been waiting years to share. Every touch was a confession, every kiss a promise. Maya whispered Elena's name like it was the most beautiful word she had ever spoken, while Elena held her tightly, as though she was afraid of letting go. They undressed slowly, tenderly, laughter and nervous smiles breaking through the heat of the moment. When their bare skin finally met, it was electric. Warmth flooding through them, hearts pounding in sync. Maya trailed kisses along Elena's neck, down her shoulder, listening to the soft sounds that escaped her lips. Elena's hands roamed with newfound boldness, caressing Maya's back, her waist, her curves, pulling her closer until there was nothing between them. The night stretched on, filled with soft gasps, whispered words, and the quiet rhythm of two souls learning each other's bodies with care and devotion. They made love not with urgency, but with patience, every kiss lingering, every touch speaking the words they had been too afraid to say. When it was over, they lay together beneath the sheets, Elena's head resting on Maya's chest, her fingers drawing lazy circles against her skin. The air was warm, heavy with the intimacy they had shared, but also light with the freedom of no longer hiding. Maya pressed a kiss to Elena's hair, her voice barely a whisper. "You're more than just a friend. You always have been." Elena closed her eyes, smiling softly, her heart finally at peace. "And you're everything I didn't know I was waiting for." They drifted to sleep wrapped in each other's arms, knowing that nothing could undo what had been written between them. The finale, resolution, and a future together. Morning light filtered gently through the curtains, painting soft patterns across the sheets where Maya and Elena lay entwined. The city stirred faintly beyond the window, but in Maya's small apartment, time felt suspended. Elena shifted slightly, her head still resting against Maya's chest, listening to the steady rhythm of her heartbeat. For a moment, she simply breathed, her lips brushing against Maya's skin, her fingers curling into her side as if to remind herself this was real. Maya stirred awake, blinking against the light before her gaze settled on Elena. A smile spread across her face, slow and tender, the kind that only belonged to mornings like this. She brushed a strand of hair from Elena's forehead, her voice still husky from sleep. "Good morning." Elena tilted her head up, her lips curving into a sleepy smile. "Morning." She paused, searching Maya's face. "I was afraid last night would feel like a dream when I woke up." Maya leaned down, kissing her softly, reassuringly. "It's real. You're real. We're real." The words settled between them like sunlight, warm, grounding, undeniable. That day marked the beginning of a new rhythm in their lives. Their friendship had been the foundation, strong and steady, but now it carried the depth of something more. They still spent afternoons at the cafe, evenings walking through the city, nights tangled in conversation and laughter. Only now, their hands clasped openly across tables, their kisses lingered longer at doorways, their love no longer hidden in stolen glances. Of course, there were fears. Elena worried about how the world might see them, about the judgment of strangers and the weight of expectations she had long carried. Maya, too, feared losing the ease of their bond, afraid that love might complicate what friendship had built. But every time doubt crept in, they found reassurance in each other's presence. Love, they discovered, wasn't about perfection. It was about choosing again and again to stay. One evening in late winter, snow dusted the streets as they walked hand in hand. They stopped on the bridge overlooking the river, their breaths forming small clouds in the cold air. Elena leaned against the railing, gazing at the water below, then turned to Maya with a soft, certain smile. "Do you realize," she said, "that I can't even remember what life felt like before you?" Maya squeezed her hand gently. "Maybe because life really began when we found each other." Elena's eyes glistened as she leaned forward, pressing her lips against Maya's in a kiss that was slow, deep, and full of promise. The city around them faded, and once again, it felt as if the world existed only for the two of them. From that night forward, their love grew not just in passion, but in the quiet details. Morning coffees made just right, sketches of Elena left tucked between the pages of her books, handwritten notes slipped into Maya's bag, lazy Sundays spent wrapped in blankets, whispering about dreams for the future. They began to imagine that future together, traveling to places they had only read about, creating a shared home filled with art and books and laughter, building a life that was wholly theirs. And though the world beyond their walls could be uncertain, even harsh at times, they carried a certainty within themselves. Whatever challenges came, they would face them together. Because what they had was more than friendship, more than fleeting affection. It was a love born from trust, nurtured through vulnerability, and sealed with the courage to embrace the truth. On a quiet spring morning months later, Elena stood in front of Maya's easel, studying the portrait Maya had been working on. It was of her, of course, but not just her face. It was her essence, her light, her soul captured in strokes of color and shadow. Elena turned, her heart swelling. "You've painted me like I'm the most important thing in the world." Maya set her brush down, walking over to her. She cupped Elena's face, her thumb brushing gently across her cheek. "That's because you are." And with that, they kissed again, not the tentative kiss of first love, not the urgent kiss of longing finally released, but the steady, certain kiss of two women who had chosen each other fully, completely, without hesitation. They were no longer hiding, no longer waiting. They were no longer just friends. They were everything.